Hello, everyone, and welcome to another KnoYoBoE production, where we bring you informative interviews and content focused on health and wellness. I am your host, Nicole Starling Shakir. April is Autism Awareness Month, and here at KnoYoBoE, we believe wellness includes honoring every journey, including those that look and sound different than our own. Autism isn't a condition to fix, it's a unique way of experiencing the world. Today, I'm honored to sit down with a brilliant husband and wife team whose son is autistic. We'll talk openly about parenting, navigating challenges, celebrating milestones, and what awareness and acceptance really look like from the inside out. This isn't just about another awareness piece. This is real life, real love, and real strength. So let's dive in. Thank you, Rashawn and Nairi, for joining us during this April Autism Awareness. We appreciate you showing up and showing your support as always. So we're going to get right into the interview, okay? All right, so let us know if you can hear me or if I'm all of a sudden just going mute, and I'll do the same for you guys, okay? So
Sure.
first off,
Thank
tell
you.
us a little bit about your son Zaid and what makes him special. What lights him up?
Hmm. Go ahead.
Do you want to go first? Okay, I'll go first. Um, so Zaid is just a very, very sweet kid. I mean, when you first see him, he's very shy. If you don't know him, he won't know you. He doesn't acknowledge you at all. If you don't know him or have some type of a connection with him, but the thing about him is once you find out something and make a connection in something that he likes, he lights up and he gets, he'll talk with you, and he'll build some type of a connection with you in that. So the thing with Zaid is we love him, but to know him is to love him.
Hmm.
Once you get to know him, you just like, he just has a great heart.
Yeah.
He's just sweet and he's so helpful. One of the major things that we love about him is he is very, very helpful and
Hmm.
he does amazing things.
Yeah. I think
So
he takes care of his siblings, especially
yes.
his younger sister. He'll cook breakfast for her in the morning. He makes sure that she eats. If anything goes down, we know those two got each other's back.
Yes.
you know.
That's what gives us comfort
Yeah,
more
yeah,
than
yeah,
anything.
yeah. It's very
Mhm.
special between it. The guy's always been that way.
Yeah.
Alhamdulillah.
And so even his connection with his siblings, they look forward to the special things that he does and the things that makes him unique, right? Absolutely. So
Yeah.
breakfast
That's
in the morning.
he's
So what's his
spoiled.
favorite? What's his
Yeah.
favorite thing to cook in the morning?
Oh, bacon, beef bacon, and pancakes. That is his favorite. And
Hmm.
if he's not cooking that, then he'll just have a bagel with cream cheese. But those are
Yeah,
his
for
go-tos.
sure.
100%.
I love
Hmm.
that. So how did you first
Yeah.
come to suspect that something might be different in his development or his behavior? Around how old was he? Can you think back to around how old he was exactly when that?
I
Hmm.
think he was like maybe 14, 15 months.
Yeah.
And my grandmother and her mother also was
Mm,
like, yo, I think something's up.
Hmm.
I think you should probably get him tested. But, the first reaction was always,
Denial.
well, he's a boy. They take time, and then I'm not going to go down my conspiracy nut theories about what, what I thought happened. But for a long time, he was doing a lot of neurotypical things. And actually, as far as the children are concerned, our older children, he was actually doing things ahead of time.
Yeah.
And then
mm,
after a certain point, it just stopped. It just
okay.
stopped. You
That was the scary
yeah,
part.
for me,
Yeah.
yeah, it just stopped. And then he wouldn't speak. He would, a lot of anger and stuff like that. So I stay around that age, and I think he got diagnosed at about the age of two,
Two and a half,
two and a half.
closer
Yeah.
to
Okay.
three.
Mhm.
Yeah, we finally, I mean, I was in, I would say me just being the mom, I was in a lot of denial, but also being an educator. I mean, I was already in school. I was already a teacher, and I kept seeing a lot of commonalities with certain kids also in pre-K, and I'm like, and when I was wondering, it's got to be something. So what can we do? So the main thing with us is once we found out something, we didn't know really what, but we knew that we had to get some type of testing. we were on
Mhm.
it, and we wanted to make sure that we were able to help him and service him.
And then what did that look like for testing in even like your area? Was it something where you had to go through a couple of different professionals? One might be, let's just say for instance, in 15, 20 minutes from here. Another one might be a further trek, but they get good, reviews or what have you. What was that process like in actually finding and trusting? I'm sure that has a lot to do with it. Explaining, what you're seeing, and we all know once we realize that there's something that could be a little awkward, a little awry, or something that's off, it takes a whole nother fortitude and strength mentally, emotionally, physically to be able to just actually go through the testing, the poking, the prodding, explaining yourself and trusting someone to give you. So explain to me a little bit about, that process for you finding someone who actually would be able to treat you and see your son for who he was.
Right. So ironically, the first one we actually spoke to was his doctor, his pediatrician. And the funny thing was we literally had to get a second opinion because the pediatrician, I think more culturally, he was like, "Oh no, your son is fine. This is normal behavior." I mean, and I was
Okay.
saying things like, he's holding his ears a lot, he's screaming a lot, he's crying all the time. I ask him simple questions, and it was like something was hurting him, and
Mm-hmm.
from the doctor it was just like, no, he's fine, he's a boy. And then we kept hearing these. And at that time it was like such a common thing to say that. And when I went back to my mom was like, no, we need to get a second opinion. There's got to
Right.
be something else, going
Right.
on with that. So
Mm-hmm.
with that, we found a service online, and we started kind of just going to different areas and finding out what can we do. And with early intervention, before the child is 5 years old, you can have
Okay.
someone actually come to the house, right?
Okay.
So before that, we had got him tested through those services, and then that person came to our house, and I think she was coming about 2 days a week.
Okay.
And then she would just show us different techniques, how to talk to him, what are some signs that he's showing, if he's holding his ears or if he
Mhm.
feels like he's hurting. Because that was another thing, he didn't like to be touched a lot. He had a
Okay.
lot of those of situations that if you
Sensitivity.
touched him a certain way, he would cry or he would scream or he'd just like pull you off. He was not touchy feely, and that was another sign. Never made that eye contact. So again, all those things with learning, those signs and seeing those patterns, that really helped us to help communicate. And also, there was a lot of anger. He had a lot of anger
Mm.
issues. So that was
Okay.
another thing that we were trying to navigate on, how to help him. If he didn't know how to express it, what are some things that we can say to him or do, to help
Absolutely.
us navigate that? You wanted to
Yeah.
add something?
Um, yeah, my recollection is a little bit different only because, like I said, a lot of the onus fell on her because she was there, uh, more so than I was. So, but then I remember the doctor that we finally did was Dr. Fayez.
Right.
He was like the head pediatrician doctor of a couple hospitals,
Hmm.
Okay.
So him right away, he was like, okay, and then we were able to get, like she said, the
The
people to
in-home
come
service. Mhm.
right there. So
Yeah.
once he saw that, like, yeah, I see what you're talking about. I see the things in which you're talking about. He gave some advice, but then he also hooked us up with this specific service.
Hmm.
And I think because of his position at the hospital, he was more equipped and more aware of what to do than it would have been, maybe another doctor who just was, just a medical doctor, but
Hmm.
this guy was plugged in. So
Yeah.
for him, he was like,
Right.
go to this particular service,
So he
and
has
then
now
like you said,
resources and yeah to point
Well,
you in a
yeah,
correct direction.
for sure,
exactly.
for
And that's
sure.
what we needed.
So
That's what
the
we
young
needed.
lady when she came, I remember her,
Hmm.
and then the
She was really good.
diagnosis, she was like, yeah, definitely he's on it, he's definitely on the spectrum. They
Hmm.
diagnosed him with PDD.
PDD, which is pervasive developmental disorder. And it's
Okay.
just a level of
Mm-hmm.
autism. And basically, they did say he is high functioning. So again, so even though there was a lack of communication, there was a lot of progress that he could have done as long as we were helping him to achieve those goals.
I understand. And I'm sure that allowed for I know that this is a like a racy time, it's a volatile time, it's a sensitive time. You're watching your son go through different, just even the questioning, the different people in his face and things of that nature. But on the back end of that, when you finally heard a diagnosis, did that provide any kind of calmness or coolness to you, or did it kind of like agitate you more because now an adjustment has to be made, right? Or was it, how did you
Not at
ease
all.
into that?
Yeah, I mean, to me, it was definitely relief at
Mhm.
first. The sadness, the crying, all of that was happening before the diagnosis. It was happening after as well, but more so
After.
before, because I did not know how to help him. I was
Mm,
always being, I was always getting frustrated, and I felt that. And a lot of the funny thing is, when we went through counseling with him at his school, they provided counseling, and I was getting feedback from the counseling. One of the major things was, my concern was, why is he so angry with me? I always
mm,
felt that he was exhibiting all of that anger towards me. I mean, he literally, I would be sitting down, and all of a sudden there's an award or some type of thing flying at my head if I'm not, you know, you know, moving out the way, I was going to get hit, or like awards and the different things that he would find, and he would just throw it at me. And then when I would
mhm,
ask him, Zaid, what's wrong? And he would just be angry. And when I
mhm,
found out from the psychologist said, and again, this is much more like 10, 11 years old, when he's talking a little bit more, one of the psychologists said, he said, you're not home. You're not there.
mhm,
And I'm like, subhanallah, because again, I'm an
mhm.
educator, so I was working a lot, and
Right.
he wasn't with me, he wasn't in the school, and that was another heartache for us, because all of our kids went to the school that I taught, is Dina school, and the fact that he
Okay.
was not able to be there. He was there for a nursery, right, for about a couple of maybe what, 2 years, and then after the diagnosis, and we realized that our school was not able to service him. It broke my heart, because he was my only child that was not there with us.
Not with
Yeah.
you
With
during the educational time period, like during the daylight
right.
hours, right? Again, the relief that you spoke about when you finally did kind of get that diagnosis, and then understanding, translating, or understanding what that anger meant. Again, you now are another 4 years in, 5 years into the diagnosis, and you're still having to make adjustments, and you're going through changes too, right? So was there ever a time where you thought, okay, I got it, it makes sense, now let's grow with it and let's learn from it and let's be better, in how we deal? Or was it constantly you having to go back to the drawing board and figure something else out?
For me, it was constantly going back because there were some things and some behaviors that was being done
Okay.
that for me it was like, what part is the spectrum and what part is just him being a kid? you know,
Okay.
you know what I
Yeah,
mean?
yeah,
Yes.
yeah.
What
That
part
is
is
big.
is he testing you, or which one is it?
Hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
for me, as a father, it's like your first instinct is to grab him. Like, yo, what are you doing?
Hmm.
But then
Mm-hmm.
one time I did kind of snatch him up, and I said, "Man, what's going on with you?" And he looked at me with a dead look in his eyes, was like, "I don't know."
Mm. That
And
was
Mm-hmm.
I was like,
powerful.
"Subhanallah."
Yeah.
And I
Mm-hmm.
said, "You know what? Maybe his reaction
Hmm.
is a reaction to my reaction. So what I have to do is model better behavior."
Yes.
Gotcha.
And this is true for all children, but I saw, especially with him, if I teach him to, to lash out when I'm upset, or, everything has to be a confrontation all the time, that's what he's
Mm-hmm.
going to do. So, and I think once I got that, the adjustment was made to, okay, let's try to talk this out with him. Because he
Right.
wasn't at first very verbal. And it
Mm-hmm.
was heart wrenching, just to go back, um, to answer your question from before. What was the heart wrenching part to me was I thought I was never going to really have a relationship with him.
Or
Because when
connection.
he was younger,
Hmm.
yeah, because
Mm.
when he was younger, he would only repeat what you say.
Right.
So if you
Okay.
ask him, Zaid, how you doing? He'll say, Zaid,
Say
how
how
you
you
doing?
doing. Right.
You know? And it's like, okay, I'm not really going to ever get at,
Mm-hmm.
maybe never really have a connection with him. And then
Hmm.
as a father, we have dreams and aspirations for our sons. to do things that we couldn't do. You want to play basketball and football. You got all these things in your head, and then you got to eventually come to the understanding that this may not be possible because of his not because of his autism. It's just because of his personality is such that he likes to be alone. He doesn't like team sports. He likes to stay more to himself. But then the adjustment came when you have to say to yourself, it's not about you, it's about him. Let's see what he likes and what he wants. And the situation, you started to see it like, okay, well, he likes, tennis and handball because he can play by himself.
And
All right, well, cool. And bowling and
That's
stuff like that. He excels at. And then we started to see him open up more.
Yes.
So the
And
more
now
we
you see
allowed
the
him
joys. You're learning.
Yes.
It's like you're learning your son every single day but you're through his eyes, not through your eyes of what your vision of a son, right? Of course, mashallah, but more so you're having to look and see what he enjoys and embrace and adapt and make the adjustment. And then before you know it, you see this resiliency that in him and you that were always there, but now it's being pulled out and extracted in a different way. I can't imagine how like overwhelming of a feeling that is as parents, kind of like to see even, your child, like it's like those aha moments, when we're sitting here, raising our children and things of that nature. If we're not constantly learning from them, not just them learning from us, but they constantly are teaching us. So your moment, especially you being an educator, learning from this different lens, I'm sure for you was challenging, but rewarding in and of itself.
Absolutely, absolutely. And just the fact that, him teaching us humility, patience, compassion. I mean, it's nothing. Anyone that knows or that has experience raising a child on the spectrum, we look at it as, we say it's a disability. It's not a disability, it's a different ability. It's a different way of doing things. And why is it that they always have to adapt to our environment? We need to start adapting to their environment.
Theirs. Right. Yep. Because they were minding their business, all comfortable in the womb, and then they had to come out, right? If they could, and then just imagine like the noises and the sounds that even, when you put the sound up to, the ultrasound and you can hear kind of like those noises, those could be comforting and soothing, right? And then here we are, hello, it's time to come out and enjoy and then adapt. We're asking him to kind of, land in this ecosystem or this world or what have you of noises, of things that are like trigger different sounds and things of that nature. So he's like, I'm gonna get there, but hold on now, wait a second, let me ease into it,
Yes.
Yeah.
So how has parenting Zaid deepened or even changed, augmented, your relationship as a couple?
You want me to answer that?
You can answer it and I'm gonna answer it. So
I'm gonna be honest with you. I didn't really, maybe because I'm not emotionally like in tune with certain things, but I didn't really see a difference. Excuse me. I didn't really see a difference. What it did do was help us, with our teamwork. How, like having meetings over like how we gonna help this kid. What psychiatrist or psychologist should we go with? Should we just, what schools should we let him go to? We have more meetings on, okay, make decisions on, are we gonna let him go to the store by himself? We gonna let him walk up the blocks by himself? Like those conversations, those getting over fears and anxiety because you have a partner. But that's the way we always were as individuals anyway. Like we ran stuff past each other. So it's never a thing that, so I think if anything, I guess you could say it brought us closer, but we was always so close even when we were younger. So it's kind of hard for me to measure, say, okay, well, did it, pull us closer together? Because we saw the studies of what happens. Some people, how they break apart because one kid has autism and things of that nature. We was trying to figure out, well, why?
How does that even
we
happen?
Didn't even understand
right? It's like that's not normal.
So that was foreign to you guys.
Yeah. And for me, it was like, okay, this is the qadr of Allah. This is what Allah intended for us to have. And then I looked at some of the benefits. Like there's certain things this boy will not do. You know what I mean? Like he'll tell you like, well, I'm not going to school today because they're doing a and this is we talking about this is in middle
fashion
school.
show or something.
They having a Halloween show or whatever it is.
Christmas party.
Yeah.
It's
This
like,
is haram. I'm not going. I'm like, oh shoot. And yeah, and then we didn't have to worry about the experimental thing with the drugs or the like certain things we didn't have to worry about with him. You know, that others you kind of sort of have to, okay, especially him being in an environment that was non-Islamic, you know, for 8 hours a day. You know, it's kind of hard, you know, it's kind of hard, but alhamdulillah, he handles it. And mashallah, I would say that he's one of my only kids, I would say, that consistently will wake me up if he see me sleeping when it's time for salah. He'll wake me up.
Wow.
Like, yo, it's time to get up and pray.
It's time to get up.
You know?
Right.
And that's and that's the thing with him and children also, you know, on the spectrum. Consistency is everything. Scheduling is everything. So they are up, like he knows he's up by 6 o'clock, and the 6 o'clock even before that. And we know if he's not, he's sick. You know, there's something wrong.
There's something,
and that's exactly
right.
why he had a cold week, and we knew like something's off when he had a cold. That's the only reason why he didn't wake up on time. Other than that, even without a clock, even without alarm, like clockwork for himself, that internal clock, he knows he has to have a routine. Certain time, I think I was doing something, and I think it was close to 6 o'clock, and I hadn't started dinner, and he comes downstairs and he's walking around getting something. I'm like, oh man! I said, Zay, what time is it? He was like, it's dinner time. Man, I'm sorry. So like, you know, so like little things like that, like he reminds us, you know, because everything he does is like clockwork.
It's a regimen. He won't even eat outside of the times he's supposed to eat. You know, like if he knows it's lunchtime, 12 o'clock, he
really like. Go ahead. I'm sorry. I think you're breaking up.
Oh, you're right. Go ahead.
But again, like him, welcome to my world, right? I have a routine, and maybe, you know, you should have one too, but you're the parent. But I'm just going to let you know, this is my routine. This is what keeps me going. And then, you know, it probably also helps for the understanding on both levels. It helps to see where he shines at too. You're giving him that opportunity to see things that you have probably never even seen or even thought in your head, that the capability, the ability is there.
Sure.
You know, so that is an interesting take on that. And then too, where what does like independence look like? When did you start to realize, like I think you mentioned earlier, where, you know, when is it okay for him to be able to go to the store on his own and do things on his own? How does independence look like for a child that's 15, where, you know, there's some things that, you know, he's expressing that he wants to try, but you're a little bit hesitant? When do you start to give him, you know, that opportunity to grow up and show you, again, continue to show you what he's capable of doing?
Well, I have to say, in my experience, that like he's going to speak more on that, because even now he's 18 years old, and we sent him to the store, and I'm making dua, and I'm like, it's still getting a little dark. Should I let him go? But you know, with Hazik, he's like, listen, we cannot keep him in a bubble. We have to understand that he's 18. You know, he needs to start experiencing some things. The stores down the block, we know the brothers in the store. When I went, before he even went to that store, I made myself visible. I went to that store and I said, listen, my son, and mashallah, they're Muslim. I was like, Assalamu alaikum. My son, he's going to be coming here. I said, if there's anything that happens, please, you let me know, because I'm his mother. I will be here. You know, like that mother instinct, you know, that mama bear, that always that protection. So for me, it's extremely hard. And even now, like I know for the summer, we might start letting him take the bus and stuff. But again, my fear really is a trigger from something that I'm going to tell a short story, something that stemmed from when he was 8 years old. We were going, it was actually the day of Eid, and we were going to Coney Island. Hazik wasn't able to go. The kids still wanted to go. And so I said, you know what, let's just go. And this was actually my first time taking him on a train, you know, with my kids. So it was a little bit overwhelming, but I was like, you know what, it's the Eid, we're going to have fun, you know, this and this and that. So subhanallah, when we got to the train station, we found, the train was there, so we were like all rushing. I had my little one, which was Zakia at the time. She was 5 years old.
Mhm.
Zaid was 8. And we're running down the stairs, and my middle daughter, I thought she had his hand. She didn't have his hand. So as we got into the train, the doors closed, and I turned my head, and I didn't see my son there. So that to me was the most triggering. Like I can't even imagine.
Mm.
Like I'm going back to that place years, and I'm still having that same feeling because it is a trigger
Mhm.
for me. And one
Mhm.
of the things that actually helped me to start Akila's Voices, which is an organization that I started before my husband started Muslim Peer Services, was really for creating a service of vans so that moms can, or fathers, families can take their children on a bus securely, so that they won't have to worry about taking a train, taking a bus, that type of thing. So that was kind of one of the ideas that came about from that. But the blessing in us being in that train station at the time when the doors closed, there was a conductor there. So as the people started seeing me panic and I'm crying and I'm screaming and all this other stuff, the conductor comes on. He said, "Don't worry, I got you. I'm going to call the conductor on the other side." A woman that was there had him. Alhamdulillah. So Allah, alhamdulillah, kept my son safe, kept him
Mm.
safe.
Mm.
But the whole point of that was, prior to that, we taught him, your name is Zaid Bronson.
Mhm.
You live at, his address.
Okay.
Your phone number is. So these small things that we taught him, he was at least able to articulate and say that he knew his
Right.
name. Because when I
Right.
went to the other side, when we finally got him back, when he was with the lady, she had
Uh-huh.
mentioned his name is Zaid because he told me my name. So just little things like that is really something to think about. It can happen.
Mm.
There's a fear,
Mhm.
but at least having those small skills, teaching those small moments for him so that he's able to remember in case a tragedy like that happens.
Mhm.
So
Mhm.
Yeah.
kind of went off
Absolutely.
on a tangent,
Yeah.
but that
No,
was
that
something that I remembered, because, and that's something I'm never going to forget, and that's a fear of mine all the time. And even him being older, I still fear that anything can happen.
but
Yeah.
again,
Yeah.
another learning moment, right? And I know as an educator, your
Right.
wheels are always turning, as far as how
Oh,
I could, make something more better, make it more efficient, quick, not necessarily even quicker, stronger, faster, but we're going to get to that point. But let's just make sure the processes and the steps are in place so that then I can turn around and teach, right? And so seeing
right.
again what this young man is capable of doing, welcome to my world. It just sounds like he's just constantly like, welcome to my world. Now, do I have your attention? Yes. If you teach me my name,
Yeah.
if you teach me what to say in these situations, and it was like that kind of like growing up where we would kind of have like these trial and error, scenarios or what have you. What would you do if a stranger walked up to you, and, don't accept candy
Mhm.
from a stranger, things of that nature. It's just kind of, you're still teaching those same important, holistic responsibilities as a child, when to recognize danger and things of that nature, what have you. But even for him, that he was probably just all right. You were the one that was more nervous and panicking, of course,
Yeah.
like any normal parent would, right? But with him, he probably
Mhm.
exuded more calmness. When you got to the other side and you saw him, and then you had this beautiful lady who was just helping him and just talking to him, and he's probably just, where you been at? I've been sitting right here. I was waiting for you, mom.
Like he said,
That's
I didn't
amazing.
see you. Where
Yeah.
were you? That's
Mm.
exactly what he
Mm.
said.
Wow.
Subhanallah.
Mhm.
Hmm.
Wow.
Yeah.
That is I can see how even still there's going to always be a place for that story. Whether it's 10 years from now, whether it was right there in the moment, the story might change a little bit versed off of your emotion and how emotionally attached you are to it, of course, but it's like you're smiling through telling that story. I'm sure when it happened, and even a month after, you probably still went into a panic attack of some sort or what have you. But now, like, you're telling that story, I can't believe, first off, I never knew that, and I've known you half my life. But even to hear you tell it, it's just like,
Mhm.
wow, what you learned from it. And that's, you know, again, with children on the spectrum, for some people, they feel as though there's not anything that can be learned. And I just feel that that's what's, you know, what I'm pulling out from this, you know, conversation more than anything is what a child can teach me. And no matter what age I am, no matter what I'm going through and what they're going through, there are some things in life that the Most High brings to us that, you know, tells us we need to slow down and smell the roses a little bit more, you know, and learn, you know, again, I can't stress that enough. And this just seems like, you know, he came to teach y'all a couple of things about yourselves, a couple of things about even how you can grow as a family, you know, in and the discipline that it takes, you know, and the patience and the compassion that it takes to even land in this system and do and flourish like this ecosystem that you guys are in. You have, you know, built and, you know, an amazing family from it. And even the way his siblings interacts with him, it's not even just like, for me, he's a quiet child. I don't see a lot of the, you know, the stigma that someone else might see on the outside looking in or what have you when they notice something might be off. I just see a quiet child because of the way in which he acclimates so well. So I can, you know, commend you. I don't know if you kind of like turn around and look back and be like, wow, we've come so far, but in who I see in front of me, it's an amazing young man. And even to say 18, like that just makes my heart go pitter patter. Like, really, 18. Y'all are pros at it.
18.
That's all.
What do you wish more people understood about autism as it relates to Black families?
Well,
Yeah,
that's
a good question.
It's not a reflection on you or your family. There's nothing wrong with you or your family. There's you know, one of the first things the doctor said to me is like, "Oh, this is hereditary," and I had to look back, like, no, it's not. You know what I mean? Like, I had to look back, and I'm like, well, is there anybody on the spectrum? You know, there's a couple people in question, right? And I'm saying, but I'm saying, if I was on the spectrum, would I even know? You know what I mean? Like, to be honest, and just understand that you can't treat it like it's a disease, and we see that happening. You know, we see some families, especially in the Black community, you keep your kids hidden, or you send them to a program, or you don't take them outside, or you don't allow them to be around the other kids, or you stick them into programs that you think that they should be in. Like, one of the heart-wrenching things for me is when I took him to go to a karate class, and he stuck him in the karate class. They put him in there with people with Down syndrome, and I'm like, that's not his level. Like, I understand what you're trying to do, but that's not his level. Like, people will pigeonhole you, so don't do that to your own child. Don't say okay, because even in the school, they don't give them homework. They don't really, they don't really promote education as well. It's like, it's not one of their priorities. Their thing is, let's just make the kid happy. Let's get him into the workforce. Yeah, let's teach him how to, and you need all of that.
Yeah,
absolutely.
But a kid should still know how to add, subtract, certain things that, exactly.
Yeah.
So alhamdulillah, what we learn from other parents and then ourselves is that you have to fight. You have to fight and be an advocate for your children.
Yeah, absolutely.
And that's the main thing, especially with black children, because I work in a hospital. I see what happens, and I work in a behavioral health situation where I see kids come that's on the spectrum all the time. And just like with, neurotypical people, if you say that you're in pain and you black, they don't believe you. You can put up with that. They had to rename the building that I actually work in because they allowed a woman to die when she came in the emergency room. And she would complain because she would come back and forth and complain about the pain that she was having. And they just thought, okay, that's her being her. They let her go sit in the lobby. She died in the lobby.
Wow.
So they literally had to come in. But these are the things that you see with the kids. They put them in these programs, and they say, okay, well, let the program raise the kids. whatever level the program is going to allow them to, to get to, that's it. You have to be an advocate for your child. You have to want more for your child and see what your child is capable of doing, and then facilitate what that child needs. Mm-hmm. Like Zaid always tells us, he wants to get into like video game production and making things like that. So we look for programs like that when he gets old enough, like now he is, to get into those sorts of things. Let's see if he can do it.
Right.
As opposed to say, well, like, no, he's on the spectrum, he can't. You can't.
Right.
You can't really pigeonhole, and I think that's what I want. People to really walk away from, especially with Black children, because they will marginalize you, and also, they will, give you these diagnoses and say like, okay, well, he'll never reach this level. How you know that? How you know? This is only Allah knows what's in a person's future. And so I think that's, to me, that's the main point. Just don't limit your child. Don't limit your child's thinking, and don't think because a person is on the spectrum that they can't reach heights. Right. As much as we don't like this dude Elon Musk, he's on the spectrum, and he's running the whole company. Absolutely. He has Asperger's. Yeah. So in which case, you can see how that can be for him and against him. But just to say, on a business level, he was able to take it there. So we can't limit our people, and show. They're already trying to do that enough.
Yes, yeah. Exactly. Yeah, definitely. Just to piggyback off of what Hazik said, it's really just a matter of, like he said, advocating for your child, not not putting your child in an area where you feel, or just saying where you feel he can't do it. Know what he likes, know what their interests are, and then go that route. And that's the main thing, knowing what they like, knowing what to do, and go that route. And don't worry about, if they don't like certain things, or you feel that they can achieve certain things, and maybe that's something they don't want to do. We also have to put that in perspective and say, it's not about what we want for them. It's what do they want for themselves, and support them the most that we do. We have so many families that say, oh, well, your kid is bad. Your kid is, it's not about a kid being bad. It's, and a lot of the times too, and I have children that I work with that I've taught that are on the spectrum, that we tell the parents, and we've had conversations on PTC, and we tell them, and I always use myself an example, and I always tell them, listen, I have a child who's on the spectrum. These are the steps. Yes, I was in denial, but these are the steps that I took. He can be in a better place. There's a lot of services that we don't have in the school that we can't service. And the fact of the matter is, these parents, they don't want their kid to be stigmatized. They don't want their kids to have a record. And I'm so passionate to tell them, listen, it's not about what you feel about their record or whatever. What are you going to do to help them? How are they going to achieve if you are so worried about what other people think about them? And that's one of the main concerns. We're always worried about what other people think. What are people going to say? Who cares? They're not paying your bills. They're there for your child. You're supposed to be there for your child.
So
and I've had so many of those conversations.
Like accepting them as opposed to trying to change them, accepting and embracing what you see and what is before you, as opposed to trying to change it to fit your optics, right? And as an educator, I'm surprised, like, because it doesn't sound like there's a curriculum, so to speak. I'm surprised through your journey and, your learning, that you haven't created some kind of curriculum or navigational guide, through this process. Has that ever crossed your mind?
Well, I do differentiated instruction all the time. I'm one of the only teachers that actually do that. And that's exactly what. So for example, if I know my student is second grade level and he can't do second grade level, then I will pull resources from kindergarten. If I have to pull resources from pre-K, I will do that. If you're just learning your letters and your friend next to you is reading paragraphs, that's okay. We're going to get you to where you need to go. And that's what an IEP is all about. It's about reaching those goals that you can meet, meeting that child where they can be. And that's what I do in the class. I've been doing that for years. And again, it's not part of the curriculum. It's not something that we have, but there are resources out there that I have used to develop that differentiated instruction in the classroom. Absolutely.
Okay. I was like, even
that's a good idea.
Go ahead, Rashawn.
No, I was saying that's an excellent idea. it should be like a roadmap, like what you should use in cases like that, because a lot of people are not trained to deal with that. When we learned that during the pandemic,
During the pandemic,
you know what I mean.
when we had
Right.
We,
to
we're not all teachers. We're not all,
and everyone had to teach their child. They were home.
Now just
for a year.
imagine, but then it was a blessing though, because what I got to see was my son's personality.
Yeah.
I didn't know the dude had a real, like a clown side. Like I didn't know that.
Like
'Cause
everyone else in the
he will
family.
one
Go
word
ahead,
answer.
say it. Uh-huh.
Exactly.
Mhm.
Exactly. One of my
What was
favorite.
that bathroom?
One of my favorite
Hilarious.
jokes. My father came with his wife, and Zay started walking up the stairs because he'll be around you for a couple minutes. He's like, God, I'm out.
I'm out.
Yeah, so he starts walking up the stairs. So his my father's wife was trying to engage him a little bit. So she was like, Zay, she was like, which one? Oh yeah, she was like, which room? Which door is the bathroom? He said it's the one with the toilet in it, and walked up the stairs. I said, yo, this guy is wild. I said,
And we all started cracking up.
and to him,
it's not funny, but
to
to
him
us,
it's not funny.
you're a comedian.
He's hilarious. Like he's
Because
and he
like
says,
it's about as basic, duh. Like which door do you think it would be? Kind of like you do the math, Dad. Answer your own question.
Right. And then, but like I said, to answer your question before, like one of those things that lights him up that we see now, he's a performer.
Yes. Oh man.
The dude was in a couple plays.
He's been in a couple.
He didn't even let us know. It was just weird. I was like, why you didn't? The teacher called us.
Teachers were calling me because he was the lead.
He was the lead in the play.
And she was like, "You're gonna come, right?" And I was like, "What?" And I was like, "Zay, did you get a permission slip for this play that you're supposed to be in?" He was like, "Yeah." So can I see it? So I went. I said, "You don't want me to come?" He's like, "Yeah." I'm like, "Why you didn't tell me?"
Yeah.
But alhamdulillah, one of the joys was just seeing him perform. I mean, when I sent out a video to certain family members that never even thought that he can even speak, like have a long conversation or just converse, they saw the video and they were like in tears.
Yeah.
They were like,
sure.
Yeah.
Subhanallah, like he was in his zone.
Yeah.
When you talk about in your zone, he was in his zone. So comfortable, so charismatic. I mean, all his lines, like I said, he had the lead.
And that was the message, like you said, we want to send to Black families too. Like I'm against, like they already know these musicals and all of this. I'm not with it, but there's certain things like you have to be open to that. Because I remember I saw there was one child I remember, he was on the spectrum and his son didn't talk till he was like 8 or 9 years old.
Yeah.
Okay.
And he took him to a basketball game. And then all of a sudden he went to the basketball game and the kid wouldn't shut up.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
And it was he just took one basketball game and the kid just stopped. He wouldn't stop talking about the game. So now the father's like, oh, you know what? Now I'm getting you a basketball court. We're going to go play basketball together. Now we see his interest. So now it's like his conversation starters and it gets him to open up so you can really see what's going on in the person's thinking, And just like with me and Zay, like we had those private moments together, like today, walking the Jummah, going to prayer and stuff together, just to pick his brain to see what he's thinking, how his brain works and how he functions. Like these are things that I learned, even in my profession, just asking open-ended questions so you don't get the short answers,
right?
But this is the thing, like you want to, drill home to especially Black families. Talk to your children. And listen to them. Even if you don't get the answers that you like or that you want, you have to talk and you have to listen. Because a lot of times these kids will tell you what they need and what they want, and we can't project our fears onto them.
Right.
Because one of my
anxieties or our anger, our frustration, our impatience, right? Because they're the windows to the world. So they, up into a really, even, I would even say 18, there's some things that they're mimicking and they're doing, and those actions are driven from the people that are in that ecosystem and who are directly related, the parents, right? So you're seeing a reflection of yourself. So if you want that to be as understood, as clear, and as transparent. You have to just be mindful of what you're exuding, because they're picking it, he's sponging it up and regurgitating it, and it just might look a little bit differently, right? But it's still the same person.
Yeah. Yeah. I just wanted one more statement on that.
Go ahead.
Like, to Black parents. And this was always my biggest fear. Especially with young Black men. We have to talk to them about how to react to these police.
Yes.
Because they don't react in a normal way. Because these police, especially in New York City, I don't know how they act everywhere else, they have a problem with putting their hands on you first and then talking to you second. Like, they try to come here, let me talk to you. And if the person doesn't react in the manner in which you want them to, especially a neurotypical person may be able to think like, okay, I'm not going to run or I'm not going to do certain things. And that's my main fear, was like, because like she said, even when I started letting them go to the store, I followed him. The first few times, I was behind trees and making sure he can get across the street and look.
Absolutely.
You have to. So, but I also teach them, like, look, man, if these police stop you, this is what you say, this is what you don't do. And you may think it's something slight, but these people are so willing to want to shoot, us and want to harm us.
Right.
And if your child react in a certain manner that's not typical to them, if they tell them to freeze and your son takes off and they shoot him in the back, like, this is the thing that I fear the most with him, allowing him to go to parks, allowing him to go do certain things, because something could just pop in his mind and he decides to go left instead of right. And it has happened. It has happened. Like, one time he got off the
he communicates with people, but more how people cannot communicate or don't know how to communicate with him. So the same patience, the same compassion that you have as parents and his family and other, friends, when he's with a stranger, someone he's never met, someone he's not comfortable with, you're going to get it. You may get a different response. So just like you said, instilling in him, again, training and learning in him how to react and how to respond.
Sure.
We've had neighbors that actually, because they've known us for years around here, and they know Zaid. And we actually had a neighbor that told my husband that they saw Zaid 2 blocks away from where he was supposed to be, because he decided he wanted to go to another store because I guess the snack wasn't there where he wanted it, where the store he was supposed to go to. And they found him, and the brother, he came to my husband and he was like, listen, I saw your son so-and-so. So the good thing is we do have neighbors here that they know him. They will watch over him.
Neighborhood watch in full effect. Like, every third house, who that neighbor is, and that neighbor knows your child. That's how it was, when we were growing up. That's what neighborhood, not just hood. They took off the neighbor part, but these were people that we knew, and they knew us, and they knew our families. And again, like you said, wait a minute now, I know you and mom and dad live right here, but you about 2 blocks over, baby. Like you said. And even in his mind, it's a matter of, they didn't have what I liked. They didn't have what I wanted. I know where there's another store. I have my mind made up. I'm a big guy. I can do it. And he, probably pushes himself, and he'll probably figure it out along the way too. But more than anything, he already has his mind set. He knows what he's capable of doing, and does. Successfully, no less.
And I didn't limit him. Like, when he said that to me, I'm like, yo, why did, and then he told me why he went to the other side. I said, bro, when you veer off, when you go, text me. Just text me, let me know, yo, I'm going here. I'm going there. I want to go to the park. Do your thing. Like she said, like, I'm a little bit more free with him. It's like, I want to go to the park. He's 18 years old. You know what I was doing at 18?
Yes, we did.
You know what I mean? Like, and he just wants to go to the park, by all means, bro. Go to the park. You know what I mean? When I was at 18, like, I can't, that's why I said it's different. Mama bear is always going to be mama bear.
Right. Safety and security is a parental right, right? However, that's my baby, right? Regardless of how you look at it. And I know that I can know the streets, the store, the neighbor, they're not going to pour in the love and the understanding of this person, that I am going to, exude, but that trust in him and, others around him, like you said, because then in your mind, I can see you're saying it's just right up the block. Like, like you said, duck behind two good trees and you see everything, right? But ultimately, you want him to be, again, instilling that independence and that confidence in him too. And then,
Yeah.
just like you said, I'm just a text away. He's
Yeah.
probably kind of thinking, I can just wham, bam, da, 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 I got it. Same thing you were saying, like at 18, you know what I was doing. He's probably, I got it, you know? And
Mhm.
until I show you differently, you know, trust me. But I can imagine you still have to build up that confidence on both ends, right? And I can
Yeah.
imagine, you know, again, we're looking at 18 and he's up here at 18. It's not even like
Mhm.
he's a little dude at 18. He's y'all both are looking up to him, right?
Pretty
Pretty
much.
much.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yep.
It's
Yep.
probably
let's
right.
let's look at like these hashtags and these ribbons and kind of like the, you know, the the connotation around autism awareness. Do you think it's just a fad? What do you, and if you do, what is it that you want viewers to really understand is realism versus, you know, just a fad, and what you want to stick and what has staying power, whether it's about your son and, you know, what he's shown you over the years, or even other children that I'm sure he has friends as well. So, you know, overall, what is it, you know, minus the hashtag, minus the ribbons, what is it that you want folks to stick with and understand what true acceptance looks like
Mhm.
during
Yeah.
autism awareness?
That's a very, very good question. And a lot of the times people do get into that where they think, okay, this is a fad. All right, all right. So we know it's autism, awareness. What are we doing this time? Are we going to, do signs? Are we going to do a
Participate in a
walk?
walk, right?
Right? These are all the things that we see, the outwardness, right? This is all like the
Yes.
actions people see. But a lot of the times people don't see the journeys that come within the household. What do you
Mm-hmm.
see? What are you not seeing internally? And like I stated before, the main thing is children on the spectrum, to be a parent
Mm-hmm.
of a child who is on the spectrum is a complete blessing because they keep you humble, they keep you patient, they help you to show compassion. These are things that I never thought I had. Like literally, we are seeing the world through their eyes. We have to have. There's no other way around it. You have to, in order to really make the family and everything else successful, you have to look at things through their eyes. And
Mm-hmm.
how that is, make your commitments with each other in terms of bonding, making sure that you are servicing them, getting them what they need. There's so
Mm-hmm.
many times, like I was saying before, having conversations with parents that are in denial. Some kids I know that are 25 years old, they have no direction, there's no education, they have no job. The parents are supporting them. Why? Because they feared for many years having this child have a stigma. But what are they doing now with themselves, right? How are they surviving? What are they doing? What are you doing to help them? You're not helping them. So the
Right.
main thing is, what are we doing in the household first to make sure that our children are being serviced, to make sure that they're successful, to make
Mm-hmm.
sure that, it's not about a disability, it's an ability. It's a different way of doing things. So
Mhm.
what can we do as families, as community members, as advocates, as supporters? How can we get together and just make sure that our children are successful?
Yeah. Yeah.
Absolutely.
There's so many things that we were talking about before on how Zaid has progressed. I mean, from the time he was little, not communicating, we didn't
Mm-hmm.
understand what was happening. And the only way that we have gotten this far was through those conversations, was through
Wow.
advocacy, was through the help that we got,
Mhm.
asking questions,
And then
and also,
actually, like, you guys expanding yourselves up and down this spectrum, right?
Mhm.
Like, that's the thing. Like, you guys have expanded yourselves and your sensibilities and your functionality and your capabilities. And, you know, the spectrum is the term that we use that the child is on. However, autism is expanding and making, you know, your awareness even more, you know, in focus. Because you could have, you guys were compassionate, you guys were kind, you guys, you know, were resilient people, you guys were strong people before Zayd came. But this, you know, stretches it in directions that you didn't even realize that you were capable of, you know, as a, and then when you look at what you're able to do, like, wait a second, this is strength, this is fortitude, this is acceptance, this is awareness. And also, like, you never tried to change him into something that he wasn't. You might have, you know, like you said, asked why or what's going on, but to actually change him and shape him into what you guys wanted to see. You guys learned that early, that that ain't it, that's not going to get a success.
Right. Definitely.
Yeah. And another thing too, creating those spaces. I remember when Zayd was also little growing up, I didn't go to the masjid much. And the reason why was because there was not a safe space that was created for him. I knew that, okay, if he goes to the masjid, he has to be quiet. He's not able to do that. So how can what can I do to support him? And at that time, I didn't have that support, you know, of other teachers. And that's what I wanted to create also with Akila's Voices.
With
and
Akila's Voices, right.
I did create some workshops where we had other women who also went through that process. We also had some workshops with them to kind of help them navigate that, because they were going through the same thing. They were like, you know what? If they're not creating that for us, then we need to do that. And sometimes we would just go as a group. Okay, there's kids here that's going to be a little bit loud. It's okay. We're going to make that space for them if you cannot provide that for us. So that was one of the things too that we had to think about. If that space is not created, how can we create that space to help support?
Yeah, I wanted to say, like you said, beyond the hashtags and all of that, for any viewers who are going to see this, you have to realize that, like you said, autism is a spectrum. And we realize that not everyone has the same experience, where you have high functioning, you have people that can't function at all, that they have to be taken care of 100% for the rest of their lives. So, you know, you can't limit yourself or limit them in that either. But we also understand that, you know, they asked us at one point to give Zayd medication for what he was doing. I refused that.
Yeah.
I didn't think he needed it. But there are some kids who need it, you know, absolutely, you know, are what they would say is out of control in a way, but not really. A lot of it is just like, excuse me, like young children, before they learn to communicate, they lash out. Like, they'll hit you, they'll do certain things, they'll write on walls, stuff that, you know, they'll pull on your leg, whatever it is to get that attention, because you're not understanding me. I'm trying to get it across to you. So now I was talking to a brother who told me, he's like, look, man, you know, my child, like she was saying, is like 20 something years old. What they did was, like you said, they stuck him in a room, just let him do what he wanted to do for many years. They let him eat what he wanted to eat. Now the boy is over 200 pounds and he's 6'2". And he can't communicate.
And he can't communicate.
You know how he communicates? Pushing the dad.
Pushing.
You know, like pushing the dad around and hitting people and stuff. Yeah. So now it's institutionalized. So, like, there is a spectrum in there's a severe, you know, there are some, you know, difference in severities.
High functioning, low functioning.
But you have to always, number one, for us, you have to ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for help. That's number one. And then before you do anything, you make istikhara and you ask Allah to guide what you're going to do. You make decisions for your children. And then stop just taking the first, and this is what we do as people sometimes, we take the first doctor tells us something, that's it. We good with that. You can't do that, because the reality of it is one doctor may see something that another one doesn't. It's not that the person's being, you know, negligent. It just may be a different perspective. Maybe that doctor seen your child grow up, so it's more like a son to them. So they give you an emotional response.
They might be biased. They might not want to see what they know is right before them as well.
Exactly. Yep, different levels of education. It could be a lot of different things.
Yeah.
You know, newer techniques that this person may have learned that the other person doesn't know about. You know, so alhamdulillah, we had a sister, may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, you know, brighten her grave and make it spacious. Dr. Aliyah rahimahullah, which she she would tell us about different techniques, about energy transfer and acupuncture and certain things that we never really got into like that because we didn't need to. But
awareness, right?
Yeah, this is awareness of there's other things that you can do, as opposed to institutionalizing your children. As
Or
opposed to
even like to me, like you guys, I commend you so well because you didn't necessarily shun your instinct. You guys are very instinctual people, and you noticed something early, and you might not necessarily have been happy about it. It might have made you, tearful, emotional, angry at times, but you didn't shun it and turn another direction, and you didn't ignore it. So not shunning your instinct and knowing your child, paying attention to your child, their likenesses, right, and their differences, right, their uniquenesses. And like you said, there was one thing that Zay did that none of your children ever did. However, you also recognize that there was attention that was needed as well, and you didn't shun that. You didn't turn away from it and say, no, I don't want to be bothered with that, or it can't be, or why me. And I feel as though that's justice for that's the best justice, and liberation even for the child, because he doesn't seem like he's a frustrated, built full of emotion, unable to express himself, kind of similar, let alone non-communicative. And, he's fit, he's tall, he's standing up to, shoulders in the air, so be proud of that, because it could have been 2 years off that y'all just kind of like pushed this underneath the rug and said he was just a kid being a kid, but you turn and you face the challenge that was before you and what the Most High showed you, and showed you very early. All praise due, like alhamdulillah, he showed you that very early. It was just a matter of how you guys as a family, individually and collectively, how you were going to approach it, and then stay 2 feet in and give the attention that you needed. And and now you look up and you're like, wow, 18 years later, you should be totally proud and amazed at yourself, I'm sure.
Mashallah.
Alhamdulillah.
Yeah, Allah accept it.
I mean.
Is there anything, as we wrap up, is there anything, we touched on so many, beautiful areas as far as, diagnosis, as far as, the feeling, the emotional, the family support, the community support, understanding, who's before you, trying to change them and make adjustments. Is there anything that you wanted to add in the last few minutes?
I think really just, for example, us as once we got the diagnosis, so my advice would be for any other couple, maybe just finding out, or maybe having family, because family can also be a detriment to a lot of the progress to your children. And we came in contact with some of that and we were not trying to hear it. So if you do come in contact with some family members that are naysayers, that are like, no, don't do that because it's going to be on his file, and woe is me and all this other stuff, because it's all about them and not about the child. Don't listen to it. Kill the noise. That's the major thing. Kill the noise. Make sure that you are there for your son. Put yourself in their shoes and say, what if I was going through that? Wouldn't I want that help?
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
And go ahead, Rashawn.
I was just gonna say, like she said, be present. Deal with the mindfulness part of it. Even if, like you say, if you're going through those things where your child is, maybe a little bit more active, before you engage, with that activity, because sometimes it can be overwhelming. And she used to get overwhelmed when he was a lot younger. I told the boy, he used to bite walls, make holes in the walls, stab the walls with all types of screwdriver. It was wild. It was wild. But one thing you have to do is pause and freeze.
Why?
And understand why this is happening. And it's not the child's fault. And it's not your fault.
Right.
This is just something, and the Creator will never put anything in your path that you cannot handle.
Right.
So there's no way that we should ever look at it as, what, this is a curse or this is a burden. It is not that. This may be your ticket to Jannah. By the way you deal with that person, because we already know that this life is a test, and we have to remember We can be tested by family, loss of wealth, all these different things that happen in our life. It's all a test. So this may be your ticket to paradise by the way you deal with this young woman or this young man, in the way that you show up for them. And you can't set them up. And like, just wanted to reiterate what Nairi was saying. When you have those kids who have to be taken care of for the rest of their lives, you can't you have to realize that you're not infinite, that one day you're not going to be here. So you have to kind of set them up for success, and don't wait until they're 30 and 40 and you're old and you can't do anything. You have to start putting things in order right now. And when you see, and if you have an inkling that your child is on the spectrum, I even had to tell my sister, and I'm gonna leave it here. I even had to tell my sister. She thought, well, he's gonna get diagnosed, and I know how the father thinks. So sometimes you have to meet people where they are. He works in a bank, so his whole thing's, okay, well, we got to spend this much money. I said no. I said, well, look at it this way: if he gets diagnosed, you'll never have to pay for another school or college as long as you live. So then now, well, maybe it's not such a bad thing. You have to deal with people on their level. And then now they sort of understand, like, okay, this is not a detriment. This is about the health and the well-being of your child in the long run.
Absolutely.
And if you're setting them up for failure by not providing anything or trying to set up something for them for the future, and you think you're gonna live forever to take care of them, you're sadly mistaken. And I think that's what we have to do as individuals. We have to try to put something in play where, okay, if this happens, then this is set up for this person.
Taken care of. Yes.
And like, you're doing just that, right? The young man can cook. The young man has navigational skills. The young man has situational awareness skills. So that's the part, a person told me a long time ago, if something was to happen to, my husband or, myself at that time, our children have been prepared, right, for how to succeed. Of course, they're still going to need emotional support, guidance, and structure and things of that nature, right? But the basic necessities in life, those struggles, our children will not, and the Most High knows best, but our children will not struggle in those areas. And that is because the direct reflection of us and the time and energy that we put, even when we saw they didn't get it the first time, they didn't get it the second time, but, standing 2 feet planted and turning and facing and making sure that, kind of even like with a Kung Fu move, you're direct, you're very focused, you're in tune with what it is you want to achieve. And it's not for the here and now. It's for, because again, you don't know what's happening tomorrow. And to go to the grave, realizing that you played a part in someone's failure as opposed to someone's success. It's just a different kind of, heat. I don't want that on my shoulders, right? I want to go to the grave, God willing, knowing that, I prepared my children with, the successful tools that they need, to be a part and thrive, right? Whatever that version of that looks like. Again, not jumping into what I want them to navigate and pilot what it should look like. However, let that play out in their own eyes. So I really think that this is a great place to stop. I think we covered so much. I am indebted and grateful to both of you for, sitting and having this conversation. Each month, KnoYoBoE, we try to, attack a subject that isn't the easiest to talk about. Each month, I feel like these conversations are getting more and more open, and they're getting better because we know someone right next door to us that is in a situation, and look how they're thriving, look how they're shining. And with yourself, and just being so close to you guys as a family, again, I'm proud of you guys. I'm appreciative to be able to just sit down, because you guys have interviewed me more than once. And then, we had the game show, last month with, myself and Naeem. So this was, even for me, a humbling experience to be on the other side and, interview my favorite couple. So I thank you so much. I make